Hello, this is the LoreMaster's daughter. Welcome back to Darkwalker on Moonshae. This is Chapter 4, Bloodletting. Now, the interesting thing about this chapter is that it's a whole lot of combat. I noticed that it pretty much goes from the boar fight to a lull in the middle where you check in with Arian. And then there's this other secondary lull period with them tracking the Furlbogs, and that one, I think that kind of dimmed things a little bit. I almost wish that the chapter had gone straight from the boar to the Furlbogs, because both of them were so dramatic. You've got the bloodletting of the boar, where unfortunately the oldest dog died, Angus, and then you get to see Canthus in action, really taking down the boar along with all the other dogs. And as I said in the last video, I could see that in my mind. That was really great. And Arian continues to be a mystery. But then you get into this lull where they're tracking the Furlbogs, and I didn't quite feel the sense of dread leading into it, that, you know, all of a sudden then there's this fight, and this fight was a little bit more chaotic for me. I didn't quite understand how everything was playing out, which I felt like was important, because I really wish, I really wish that had been clearer. And then you get to the end where we lose Arlen, and at least that much is clear, that we know how he dies and kind of what his last steps were. I know that it's only been 4 chapters, but he was a significant secondary character. And then of course the chapter ends with this mysterious savior of theirs, and then it goes in to Cameron, which I just said out loud. It took me a second too. The unicorn. So you've got Cameron showing up, and I thought it was interesting, number one, that this was a male unicorn, and that two, that he actually got a name, because of course the goddess hasn't been named yet. The pack and the unicorn and the leviathan were all kind of given these generic names, so I was convinced that's all we were going to know them as. We actually got a proper name for Khazgaroth, way early on. So I don't know, it started out so strong, and I was just a little bit let down by the end of the chapter. It didn't feel like Arlen's death was all that significant, and I just wish that I wish he'd been a significant enough character, or his death had been given enough gravitas for me to care about him, because I'm convinced that by the end of the book I'll have completely forgotten about him and not really thought about it too much. So, oh well. On to chapter 5.